motivation, yeah, to get through the day. Just tune in, cause we'll make a way. Positivity. So if you need empowerment to make a change, yeah, start with today.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of Man Cave Monday. And I cannot tell you how excited I am this week to have yet another one of our powerful and impactful community members and leaders that's joining me this week. He is, of course, none other than our representative from District 3, Leon County School Board. His name is Darryl Jones, and he is our guest tonight. He needs no introduction, but he certainly deserves one. Thank y'all for watching with us tonight. Mr. Jones, how are you, sir?
Reverend, I am, in the words of the late Reverend Dr. Matt King
I'm
Carter,
waiting on it.
I am deliciously proud
That's it.
to be here with you in Man Cave Monday. Anytime I get a chance to share with you and the wonderful men and women, brothers and sisters, children of God of the Jacob Chapel Baptist Church. I'm wearing Pine View today, Reverend.
That's right.
Uh, I mean, when I tell you I am deliciously proud, I have to thank you. Um, One, your impact and the impact of your church with children has been enormous, particularly at the beginning of the school year.
Wow.
For a number of years, you did a community wide back to school drive that included so many services and supplies that our children needed to make certain that they were prepared to begin the rigors and the responsibilities of going back to school. But then after the pandemic, you didn't get weary in well doing, Reverend. You and the good people of Jacob Chapel then made certain to then just focus your efforts because we had shut down as a district. We were
Yeah.
no longer letting organizations and churches and community based organizations like yours come on our campuses, but you did not let that stop you. You and the Jacob Chapel Baptist Church made certain that y'all then focused your efforts on a campus just right in your church's shadow to have enormous impact. And it's not just a hit and miss, it's been sustainable.
Yes, sir.
Throughout the year, you and your congregation serve not only the children, but the teachers and the faculty and the staff. And this brand new school year, the first school year that we will have come back fully, no longer hybrid, half
Yeah.
at home, half at school, but now that we're bringing all of our babies back on campus,
Yeah.
the Jacob Chapel Church is there to greet them and to meet them and to meet their
Wow.
needs. And I just can't tell you how delighted and how grateful I am. I know I speak for Principal Carmen Connor, one of the best principals in all of Leon County schools, when I say thank you to you and to the wonderful families of the Jacob Chapel Church. I
Wow.
appreciate you more than you can know.
Sir, I am humbled to just hear you say that. I'm supposed to be interviewing you today, and you
Well,
come
have
on
great.
to this space with those kind words. I really do appreciate it. And shouts out to Pine View, like you said, Principal Connor, the parents, the students, the staff. They are awesome over there. They're amazing,
They are awesome.
and we could not.
Pine View is a special place, Reverend, as you know.
It is. It
A
is.
very special place.
It
Very
is.
special place.
And let me say for those who do not know, if somehow you live up under a rock and you don't know who this man is, Darryl Jones is a community advocate. Long before he ran for office, long before he sought official leadership in any capacity, he led by example. He led with his energy, his time, and his personal resources for our kids. And he chose District 3 as his place of service. And it was my honor to support him when he was running. It was my honor to work with him during his whole administration and even what he's doing now. And so he's not coming into this space trying to get elected for something or trying to. All he's doing is doing what he always does. He's being Darryl Jones. He's prolific. He is articulate. He is profound. He's poetic. All of that. So we just gonna toss flowers at each other all night. But I asked you, Brother Jones, to come into this space for a very specific purpose. Um, in past conversation, we've discussed your journey into leadership, and we've discussed your biography and all that, where you're from and who your peoples are and all that. But for tonight, we are here on serious business. It's critical to the direction of our school system and our children's education and their safety. You have been on the forefront of this conversation about masking and mask mandates or no mask mandates, vaccinations for our community. You've been at the forefront of all of that. Where are we now? And I know you can only speak for Leon County Schools. So where are we now in that process?
Well, Reverend,
And take your time, keep it real. You in the man cave. You got your clear glass. I got my red cup. There's water in it, I promise.
and I'm drinking from my pine view glass.
There you go.
But let me just say this. I, Reverend, the fact that we're having these types of conversations is the most nonsensical thing I can imagine. The numbers are ramping up in our community and across the nation. Imagine this, when we were having this same conversation just a year ago, we were talking about operating in a hybrid situation where half of our children were home, half of our children were in school, and we wanted to bring down classroom density so that we could ensure social distancing. It was very, very rare for childhood infections or even transmissions.
Yeah.
And the community listened. And for an entire school year, from August to June, our campuses were fully masked. And when we came on our campuses, vendors were fully masked. And our children were doing well, our faculty understood. And then there was this sinister conversation that started to permeate the public consciousness as if somehow there was some equating to liberty and freedom and expressions of democracy and choice that started to wither away at those things that kept us safe. There was this voice of malcontents who wanted to charge that somehow doing that what was in the best interest of ourselves and our neighbors was somehow anti-democratic, was against liberty and freedom, expressions of freedom. And then we saw a Delta variant, because we never got to the herd immunity that would help to have brought an end to this crisis. It now persists, and it persists more persistently and more with greater impact and opportunities
Yeah.
to have mortal impact. We're seeing children hospitalized
Yeah.
and children who are past dying because of these variants, particularly those who, when we started a year ago, we had no vaccination. We clamored for the vaccination. We all wanted the vaccination, and then we got the vaccination, and now we say we don't trust it. And so now, as we prepare to go back to school with imagine as a school district of 30,000, 15,000 were at home last year. Now all the remaining 15 come back, and now there's a conversation about mask optional. And I'm just going to tell you this, right?
Yeah.
This sinister conversation starts because people do not value the lives of their neighbors. Just like I make the argument about how I know what the impacts this has on my community.
Yes.
My baby stretching all the way from Fort Braden, way out Highway 20,
Yep.
all the way to Rickards High School, and Sable Palm, and Bond, and Oak Ridge, and Pineview, and NIMS, and James S. Rickards High School, all those schools in between. And I count Woodville, I count Fairview, and I count Conley as mine, although they're not in my district, but they're on
Yeah.
the south side and Hartsfield.
Right.
And what the problem is, and I'm just going to tell it to you because you can appreciate this, Reverend.
Yes.
They know, like we know, the impacts that this disease has on working class families. Working class families who are oftentimes either uninsured or underinsured. So when they get the disease, they don't look at every, a lot of our families don't have the luxury of a pediatrician.
Right.
Their primary doctor is found in the emergency room.
Correct.
Their primary care physician is found at patients first when they're able to put their money together to be able to go take their kids to the doctor when they're sick.
Yeah.
Their primary care physician may be found at a federally qualified health center like Neighborhood or Bond. And so because they don't have that type of triage and primary care attention, the impacts are different oftentimes in our community. And the ones who are part of this mask option mandate are very much aware of it. Don't be deceived. They're trying to talk about, well, my kid doesn't want. No, we don't let the preferences of children set policy.
No.
This is a sinister campaign, right, to undermine the quality of life and the safety of children.
Wow.
And you can appreciate this, Reverend. I'm gonna stop. But we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Ah.
We wrestle against principalities, right?
Yeah.
And wickedness.
Yes, sir.
In high places.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. And don't be deceived that it's about anything else. It ain't about liberty and democracy or harassing children. The people who continue to perpetuate this argument and support it at the highest level of government, they know exactly what they're doing.
So are you saying then that they would, even though they put themselves at risk and even some of them may die, they would rather see more of us dead than and still sacrifice a few of them? It's worth it to them. Is that what you're saying?
It's a war. Think about this. You've seen me and you, you and I, excuse me, I got my degree in English. You and I have seen enough war movies to know that persons in power anticipate casualties.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
That's where I am with this.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so sinister.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've got children who are dealing with real problems here. And yet you would use your lofty position to make arguments regarding a mask mandate and doing everything you can to thwart a mask mandate to keep our children safe. In the names of parental choice, it's because there's something more sinister afoot here.
Yes.
And I'm certain of it.
I agree with you.
Because we know what the impacts are in our community compared to theirs, oh yes.
we are talking.
We are highly intelligent.
We're talking about some real stuff here. And the fact that you are willing to bring it out in that vein.
And that's why, and the reason I think it's important that we say this, Reverend, we as persons who are working class people, we can't be a part of that narrative. We need to know better and subsequently do better.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're trying to convince us of this.
Yeah.
As if we should not protect our children.
Yes.
Right? But we know better. We can't believe the hype. If I might use a phrase from Mark, we can't believe that hype. And we can't be complicit in their plans to undermine our families and the lives of our children.
I think it speaks to how sometimes we mimic the behavior of our oppressors, and we allow them to convince us of a certain narrative, and it gets in our headspace to the point where we will do their work for them. We will do the enemy's work for them, Um, my family and I arrived in Tallahassee in 2004, and even then, in 2004, I can remember going to Longhorn on Monroe Street, North Monroe Street, and there was a smoking section and a non-smoking section. This is 2004, that you could still smoke in a restaurant, right? Just thinking how polluted that air was. Even in the non-smoking section, you could smell it, right? But somebody realized that it was a public health hazard and they
That's
cut
the
it off.
allegory I used at school.
Yeah. Somebody understood that it was in the public's best interest to make it law, to mandate that you gonna keep other people safe. I don't care what your habits are, I don't care what your opinions are. For the betterment of the community, this becomes law that you cannot do that in a restaurant.
Think about this too, Reverend.
Yeah.
You're a parent.
Yes.
You couldn't leave a hospital unless you had a car carrier.
In 2004, when our child was born.
Because why? Because policy dictated the safety of your kid.
That is correct.
If you thought Sister Simmons could not have gotten a car, but you that baby in her arms. The baby had to, whether it cried or not, it had to get in there. You had to show proof of it.
That's it, brother. I got a picture.
We're old enough to remember when seatbelts used to was a lap belt that you kept buffing up and just sat on top of.
Just sat on top of it.
Now you got cars designed where you can't even turn your car on.
Yep.
Unless you got your seatbelt.
Because it can sense.
It'll ding and ring and bling.
Yep.
Until you finally comply. Why? Because it's in the interest of our own safety. So here now, these parents come and rail against us and tell us, the safety of my children is not your responsibility. I said, okay, then okay, and I don't say this out loud, but sharing this with me, you, and the folks at Jacob Chapel. If your children's safety is not my responsibility, how about we stop doing background checks? Since your children's safety is not my responsibility.
That part.
It's your responsibility. How about this? How about we end all extermination contracts and let the roaches and the spiders take over the school?
Yeah.
Since your children's safety is not my responsibility. How about we, instead of using plastic forks and knives, how about we just put out metal utensils for all the babies, regardless of age, and let them fix their food and eat their food and dine on their own without any regards to where they are, their adeptness at using utensils. What does it matter? It ain't my responsibility. Yours. So these are the types of false narratives, and we can't be. And when I say we, I'm talking about folks who come from working class families. This sinister conversation regarding trying to equate liberty and freedom with wearing a covering over your face to ensure the safety of yourself and your classmates and the teachers who stand before you is a lie from the depths of hell.
Yes.
And I just want people to understand that this ain't political. It's not just political. It's also spiritual. It's also scriptural.
Yeah.
And the men and women of God must call it out for what it is.
Brothers and sisters, we are in the man cave. This is Darryl Jones, Leon County School Board District 3. Y'all need to share this conversation. Don't just like it. Don't just comment. We welcome your comments, but please share this with somebody. This conversation really needs to go viral. Brother Jones has given of his time these past couple of months, just really getting the conversation started. I've heard him on at least 6 or 7 different platforms being interviewed in this very same way, sharing and reiterating this information. Aside from the school board meetings where he has literally stood by himself on certain things and was willing to speak truth to power. So I thank you just for even being here tonight with us. I said to my congregation on last Sunday that we have a choice, regardless of what the governor says, regardless, because this time last week, our superintendent of schools was still sort of vacillating between, whether or not we should have a mandate or for how long. And he has since sort of landed somewhere. But anyway, I told my congregation, I said, regardless of what leadership does, you as a parent are the head of your household. And you have a choice. My child ain't going to school without his mask on. That's our mandate for our household to protect him and those around him. He got vaccinated when his age group came along. That was our choice. That was our mandate for him and our entire household. Can you speak to the parent maybe who is on what we feel is the right side of this argument, but yet they are subjected to this pressure to either keep silent or to just kind of acquiesce to some of the toxicity that may be in the environment? Can you encourage the parent that they should continue to hold down the mandate in their own household?
But what we cannot do, you remember in the New Testament,
Preach.
when people no longer listened to God or sought knowledge, and he let them give sway to their reprobate mind. That's why this is not just political, it is scriptural, it is spiritual. We cannot give way to a reprobate mind,
Good God Almighty.
right? And as the heads of households, as a voice in this community, let me be very, very clear. Because I know we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but wickedness in high places. I go back into the Old Testament that tells us, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray
Yeah.
and seek my face
Yeah.
and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins,
And do what?
and heal the land.
Yes, sir.
So, as heads of as the remnant of God, it is important that we speak truth to power, and there's no greater weapon in times like these than the word of God. We got to put this in the right context, right? Let me be very, very clear about our superintendent. Our superintendent goes across this district. He goes to every school. I don't go to every school. I go to my schools. I'll be the first to admit that. And I also visit other Title I schools. I understood when he first took a stance about mask optional, it was before the Delta variant started wreaking havoc.
Okay.
But that also helped him to come to a greater sense of clarity. When we started to see the numbers ramp up, when we first, as a district, and I was with him on mask optional around the 4th of July, then we started to see the numbers ramp up. TMH did a great job of informing our community how their numbers were increasing from the teens. Then next, we were at 30. Then we were at 50. And so
Yeah.
as we saw the impacts, and HIPAA doesn't let us know who these people are,
Right.
but then the hospital started to talk about the ages that were impacted. So when you know better, and then what they taught us, Reverend,
You do better.
when you know better, you do better, right? And so that's why it was very clear to me. And then and see, this is the thing that gets me, Reverend. They want to say, well, Darryl Jones is playing the race card. That's the argument that they use, right? When you black and you fearless, right? You playing the race card. Reverend, I was a black boy raised in a Negro by Negro grandparents and parents in a colored community, and now I'm an African American man.
Yeah.
Right? I don't play the race card. I am the race card.
Yes, sir.
And my experiences, and because I came up in a working class family, because I grew up Title I, that informs my perspective. So when I talk about what the impacts are on families in terms of insurance and them being able to get the same type of medical care that other folks can get compared to what we may get, or how long it might take us to be able to respond, that's just, we might Robitussin that thing until it's too late. Right? Because we don't have that access to pick up the phone. We can call Dr. Jermaine Simmons and say, hey, Doc, little Darryl's sick. Well, look here, bring him on in. I'll let the nurse know that.
Yeah.
We don't have those types of accesses.
Right.
And
right.
when we leave our jobs, oftentimes, doesn't mean we love our children any less, but when we miss work, that's a meal.
That's right.
That's gas in the car that we can't do. So there's impacts in terms of the social economic impacts on our families.
For sure.
So getting sick ain't the same for us. right? And everybody, and these parents are talking about these kids. No one's talking about the teacher. Teachers, your wife's a teacher. How many times does your wife come home with the flu, strep throat, mono, because she's around there with them, especially when you're with little kids?
Yeah.
So if that's transferable to parents or to teachers, imagine this,
Yes.
right? You might have your parents might be visiting you,
Right.
and little OJ brings that back home,
Yep.
and the impacts that has on the family. So I
Yeah.
look at these things differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
And then as a person who's a person of faith, although not perfect, but I still am guided by my faith.
Right.
Right? Proud member of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal
Yes.
Church.
Yes.
I'm guided by my faith. So I look at things differently than perhaps my colleagues do. That's why I knew I had to stand tall.
Yes.
Right? That's why I made the allusion to God don't want. And he didn't need any coward soldiers, because I realized that this is more than just political.
Yes.
It is spiritual, and it's scriptural, and it's born of the devil. And so I want parents and heads of households, whether it's a dad is the head of the household, if it's me or the head of the household, or the wife or the mother is the head of the household, assume your rightful authority and provide guidance for your family. Know that this is a teaching moment for your children.
Yes.
To teach them that I am indeed. We answer God's question to Cain. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes.
Yes.
You are.
Yes.
Your brother's keeper. And that's why you want to wear your mask.
So I'm almost at a loss for words. Not only is Brother Darryl Jones a faithful member and steward of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, he is also a part-time licensed Baptist preacher. I got his piece of paper right here. I've signed it. He just won't take it. But I'm trying to negotiate with Dr. McAllister to let you go ahead and be a licensed Baptist. You can keep your membership, pay your tithes at Bethel, but I'm about to license you to preach.
I'm like Jonah. I'm trying to go. I ain't going to Nineveh. I'm going to Tarsus.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
not looking for no fish. I ain't looking for no fish.
He gonna swallow you up and spit you out. He gonna spit you out in the pulpit. Watch what I tell you. I preached a series of messages, started from February of this year, and it just ended probably in June, titled Breakthrough. And the premise of that series simply stated that all of us on some level have privilege. If you got a car to drive, you got privilege because somebody doesn't have it. If you are a man in this country, in this world, you have privilege. If you have a job, if you make a certain amount of money, if you live in a home versus renting a home, you have privilege. All of us have privilege. If you got food in the refrigerator, you got privilege. And so it becomes the responsibility of those of us who have privilege and access to then help the underprivileged break through. Whatever the demographic is that I just mentioned, everybody's oppressed on some level. If you're a woman in this country, you are oppressed. If you are poor in this country, you are oppressed. If you are African American in this country, you are oppressed. If you live in the South, you are oppressed differently than you are in the North. There's always somebody being oppressed. And so the idea of whatever we've done for the least of these, we've done it unto God. It becomes our responsibility to fight for, to advocate for, to speak up for those who do not have a voice at the table. That is what I hear when I hear you speak. You know, I hear a person who has been blessed by God, who has been afforded certain privileges, but you're not going to forget where you came from, nor are you going to forget those who are still in an underprivileged and underserved position somewhere. That is what I hear when I hear you talk.
Angela and Davin's sons will never let me forget from whence I came.
Yeah.
Listen, when I think about, when you talk about how we all have different privileges, you can't help but think about the parable of talents.
That's
right?
correct. That's correct.
And that's exact. And I don't know what scripture,
Mm-hmm.
what scripture you use, but that is certainly applicable.
Yes.
So we all are all differently blessed, but blessed just the same.
Yes.
All of us with different gifts and graces.
Yes.
Right. And let me tell you something, Reverend. And this is why I think it's so important that we have the superintendent we have now. And I'm honored to serve as a school board member. I am oftentimes reminded of the story of Esther and Mordecai,
Yes.
right? And so I realized that, and it's important, Reverend, and I say this modestly, but it's important. I believe that God called us for such a time as this.
Yes.
And if we believe all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purposes, then this is my time and my issue. And I would be doing less than what God would have me to do if I did not speak clearly, speak boldly, speak courageously about what I know is right. Now, sometimes that we may not always see things the same way, but this right here, Reverend, is so easy. I'm reminded what my grandma said: common sense ain't common, right? This is a common sense issue, and there are those who are trying to, and that's why it just offends me when people don't seem to understand. We are willing to make exceptions. This is what let me clarify, Reverend, so our public will know in case they don't know.
Yes.
We were armed with a choice. The district made the choice that we were going to have we want to do mandatory masks with only medical exceptions because there mask fatigue, COVID fatigue is real, Reverend.
Yes.
And some of our babies, right? Some of my babies have a variety of health concerns, even mental health concerns that makes wearing a mask. I even have children who have learning concerns, right? Where depending upon their, a variety of things that children are, circumstances that children have.
Yes, sir.
That makes it does not make it easy, makes it extra difficult for them to be masked. And we're willing to make that concession. And if those children have those types of concessions, provide us with proof.
Yeah.
Well, that was not good enough. They wanted parents to have the right to make that decision. And then that meant that children could be exempted from wearing masks, not just for medical issues, but for preferences. That means a little kid who say, "Well, I want to wear a mask," and his mom could opt him out. He ain't got to.
Well,
and that's what I found most offensive.
Because you and I didn't grow up in a time where children had choices.
And this is what the governor and the commissioner of education were weighing in. They wanted us to be able to accept preferences. And here now the safety of a classroom is now no longer the responsibility of the school district. It's the responsibility of any individual parent. It did not take into consideration the impact it would have on our school bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, or our instructional faculty, right? All we were concerned about by virtue of this whole mask mandate, right, with parents opting in or out, was the preferences of children. And that I find downright offensive. And that's why I say this is something far more simple. And then when you hear, and there's persons like you and I who are students of history, when they use language that your dad, right, my grandparents used in the civil rights movement to now make an argument about a mask is offensive.
Well, let's go all the way back, right? I struggled a little bit in high school academically, so I missed a lot. But I remember from U.S. history this term called states' rights. During the time of slavery, certain states, when slavery was abolished, they argued, well, we should still have the right as a state to keep our slaves, basically. And they would make it a thing. States' rights, states' rights. I don't care what New York is doing. We're Georgia. We're Mississippi. We're Alabama. We should be able to keep our slaves. States' rights. No imposition from the federal government. No interference. Let the states have the right. So then we have now a governor who took it upon himself to threaten. And let me do a disclaimer, because stuff like this tends to get misinterpreted. The opinions that are expressed here are not necessarily those of Darryl Jones, Leon County School Board District 3. These are my words. These are my thoughts. We have a governor who threatened to withhold the pay from any school district or school board superintendent, school board member, principal, and otherwise, whomever, if they had a mask mandate in place. Now, for centuries, These people have been talking about states' rights. And yet, our own governor doesn't seem to want to give each district the right to make its own choice. But now he wants to be totalitarian, if that's the right word, uh,
That's it. That's
autocratic
it.
dictatorship. Again, these are not your thoughts; these are my thoughts. But I'm sure you're gonna, share what your thoughts are.
And
I thought it
and
was outrageous. Um,
but let me take it another step
Go
further.
ahead.
Right? When we talk about states' rights, you will recall, right? Now, let's not forget the CDC has been very, very clear. The American Pediatric Association has been very, very clear. All children should be masked in schools, right?
Yes.
The CDC, the Federal Health Department, the federal arm of that manages the Center for Disease Control,
Control.
said on behalf of the federal government that children should be masked. Well, let me take you back as a student of history. When Kennedy
Mm.
and Johnson, when there were federal mandates and people like Wallace and
Yes.
Faultless in Arkansas would not comply, the federal government came to the aid, right,
That's
to
right.
make certain that what we said, but the federal government said was endorsed in spite of states' rights, right?
That's correct.
So that's why I thought it was important that the federal government should weigh in as we were having these discussions. And see,
Yes.
let me be very, very clear about our superintendent, right? Now, and sometimes he and I agree, sometimes we don't, but I have nothing but the greatest respect for him because I know his motives are always authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a person like me who believes in loving first and leading second.
All right.
And his issue with mask optional was because he saw the children's fatigue in mass, and it wasn't the same type of health crisis when he first took that position as it is now, right? So when we knew better, he then changed his mind to do better.
Yeah.
I believe in mask mandates from the very beginning because it just makes sense.
Right.
I didn't see it as a fatigue that he described. And may I also let you know that after our first week of school, all of last week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Reverend, our kids in great number. I talked to my principals. Now, I can't speak for any other districts, but this district, the people who come to your church, the people who I know, the people who I know are in District 3, they are wearing their masks.
Yes.
The teachers are wearing their masks. Everybody was looking at a picture of Rickards High School, right, where the
Yeah.
kids are
Please
in
talk
that
about
crowd
that,
and
because the
dressed in hallway,
locals.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Don't forget you had ninth graders who were new to the campus. Then you had 10th graders who had opted out the year before, who were also new to the campus. So nobody knew the best routes. But when I looked at that picture, you know what I noticed? I didn't just notice that the hallway was congested. I also noticed that during the time when children are authorized to take a mask break, because they weren't socially distant, our children were responsible enough to keep their masks on. And if you zoom in on those pictures,
Yes, sir.
our little heroes and sheroes had their masks on because why? Because wearing is caring. They knew it was right. They needed to cater to the vulnerable. And so they could have readily snatched their masks off because this
Right.
was the time to do so. But because they weren't socially distant, every kid you see in that that photo has a mask on. So let's change
And
that narrative.
that's
And I think
important.
that's important.
That's important because for the locals especially, right? Because I saw when that picture dropped on Facebook and people went crazy. See, they super spreading over there and they got them kids. But for you to explain it in that context makes a difference. And it also speaks to going back to the superintendent's decision and even your weighing in on that decision. We now live in a 24-hour, minute by minute, second by second news cycle. And so, whereas we used to get updates once a week about different issues, we talked offline before we got on live. We were talking about Walter Cronkite, right? We would watch Dan Rather, we would watch Peter Jennings, right? And these were our nightly news people. We would watch things that dripped out weekly or flowed out, on a less frequent basis. But now it's literally every nanosecond. And so because of that, we are watching our leaders in real time. We're asking them for answers second by second. And so when they change their minds, sometimes we criticize them, not realizing that they're going on the information that they have at the moment. Do you think it's accurate to frame it that way? Because I believe it's
Yeah.
really it's a sociology project, in terms of how the internet works and how we expect now things to be second by second, when really we shouldn't be watching the play by play second by second, because stuff can change the next second.
Well, this is why I think it's so important, right? We as see, again, it goes back to being spiritual and scriptural, right? The Bible talks about how that which was right will becomes wrong, and that what was wrong becomes right, right? And when that's why we as a district have to be honest brokers. That's
Yes.
why we have to be integrity brokers. That's why I think it's so important that we keep a dashboard that continues to make our families aware of what the impacts are in our districts and at our individual schools in terms of COVID impacts and the like. That people might be able to know facts that they know they can trust,
Yes. Yes.
voices that they know they can trust. And even though, and I'll be very clear about my colleagues, right? Everybody, that's why it's so important. That's why elections matter,
Yes, they do.
right? Elections matter because you want someone who evidences the values of your community, right? And so, as you can imagine, as disparate as our community is, from Northeast Tallahassee to Southwest Tallahassee and vice, and they're all over the place, that's why I try to be an uncompromised voice that is a reflection of the values of the community that I represent. I talk about, nobody else is going to talk about what the insurance impacts and families being uninsured or
Yeah.
underinsured. But that's why my voice is so important, to make that voice known, so
Yes.
that when we make decisions, we come to the kind of consensus that caters to the, that's what I've said from the very beginning. It is our responsibility to cater to the vulnerable and not cater to the fringe. And
Yes.
that's the point I continue to make to my colleagues. Regardless of where you come from, we've got to always do the right thing to make certain that vulnerable populations are best served and not cater to just to small-minded people
Yes.
who are entirely self-serving and narcissistic.
Yes.
And so that's why I think, that's why I'm grateful that our superintendent weighs in the way he does, the way
Yes.
he I mean he's we disagree without being disagreeable, because we
Mm-hmm.
always can come back and revisit things later. And I
Yes.
think that type of collegial relationship has served District 3 well, because he's been, I mean, it's an important relationship,
Yes.
particularly now dealing with the issue of the safety of our schools and our children and our faculty.
Agreed. Agreed. And shouts out to Superintendent Rocky Hanna as well for his leadership throughout this whole pandemic. I'm praying, and he's actually on our prayer list. He didn't ask to be, but he is officially on the church's prayer list, because any leader during this season, pastors have had to carry a heavy burden. Uh, Elected officials. We talked last week to the sheriff out in Gaston County, Sheriff Morris Young. I'm praying for
Great
law
man.
enforcement during
Great
this
man.
time. All of us need prayers if we're in leadership. And I say it in this context. Again, these are my thoughts, these are my opinions. Even in lieu of what President Biden just said about supporting, districts in states that maybe have been threatened, like Florida, even in lieu of him pledging his support and federal resources, we as community members have got to make our voices heard and fight for people who are fighting for us. What I mean is, if the governor is threatening Darryl Jones's check, and let's be clear, Darryl Jones ain't in this for no check. But if the governor is threatening his check, and Darryl's been fighting for us all this time, then Darryl should not have to speak up for himself in that regard, although he's well able. But we got to
Well,
speak up for our superintendent and our board members and our principals. That's up to us. I started to go live last week when I heard that news drop, because I'm like, no, Mr. Governor, you're gonna have a 1965 style fight on your hands. You're gonna
Well,
have some people
the
marching.
superintendent was very, very clear when he said his salary wasn't worth a child's life.
That's it.
And I'm like the old folks that say, I make money, money don't make me.
Yeah, and
Right?
you should not have to
And
say that
and I'm
yourself.
looking, and I'm used to not, here, as long as the light switch turn on,
That's
and
it.
if I ain't got to eat potted meat and soda crackers to save
Yeah.
a child's life, I'm willing to do
And
so.
we know that.
So,
We know that about
and so,
you.
and that's because this guy. That's why he doesn't get it. Is that the best you got? You gonna come by salary?
Well, I'm gonna tell you
That's the
why
best
though.
you got.
Let me tell you why
Right?
though.
But what we must do, and this is a
Uh huh.
part that this is why I say it's important that the federal government weighs in. What he can't do is try to take us out of office with some trumped up charges that will then take us out so he can then replace us with the people
Yeah.
that he would want to have. This
Yeah.
is not a banana republic.
No. 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 And let me tell you, the reason why he thought that would be effective. It's because people like him and people of his ilk, they are money driven. They
Right.
put money at the top of their priority list. So that's the only language they know. So they figure
He
if I
doesn't,
can hit your
your pocketbook, right? But
yeah,
look here, he doesn't know the love of money, not money. It's
right,
the love of money
is
that
the
is the
root of
root
all evil.
of all evil.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So that doesn't do anything
But
for
that's
me. But
what
I gotta
drives
be able to
them.
sleep at
See,
night.
it's the love of
I gotta
money
be able to sleep
that
at night.
drives them. And they don't realize we're survivors. We have always done more with less. We are the ones who took, and I'm not advocating for this, but it is what it is. We took the foot of the pig. We took the
Oh,
intestine of the pig. We took the ox tail and made meals out of it. That's what they
I
left
got
us.
neck bones in there right now.
And we had oxtails for dinner after church on Sunday. This is what they left us in those days. And we made the best out of it. So threatening our checks, threatening, our so-called livelihood, God is our source. But just to be clear, Darryl Jones is not going to have to speak up by himself. Rocky Hanna's not going to have to speak up, and any other board member and principal and superintendent is not going to have to speak up for themselves here locally. We, the people, are going to have to march for them. And no, it is not some backroom agreement between anybody and myself. All right, now, Rev, you say it because I don't want to say it. No, this is my passion. And I'm saying that we have got
Exactly.
to speak up for those that have been speaking up for us. Because I ain't on
Reverend,
nobody's
Reverend,
payroll.
Reverend, this is so important, and I talked about this at the school board meeting,
Yeah.
right? Right. This is why we must remain students of history, right? The Bible tells us that the word is given for instruction,
Yes.
correction. I mean, correction,
Reproof.
reproof,
Yep.
and instruction in righteousness, right? But I'm also reminded of those stones, right? When we had to lay out them 12 stones that
Yes.
people might remember
What do these
from
stones
whence we
mean?
come. Well, so let's be very, very clear, Reverend. Look here. This is a time for revolutionaries. This is a time for patriots.
Yes.
This is a time for abolitionists.
Yes.
This is a time for suffragists, right? Women didn't always have the right to vote. We used to be 3/5 of a person. The British tried to tax us without representation. So we as a nation in this experiment called democracy have always been the ones who stood up,
Yeah.
right, and faced down tyranny, right?
Mm.
So right now, we need our community to stand up and say, we are not going to tolerate
We
you
ain't having it.
making decisions that are not in the best interest of our babies, our children. Our teachers matter to us. We want them to work in the best environments possible. So what we see is history repeating.
Yeah.
Right? After slavery, they came with apartheid.
That's right.
Called Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
Right? So the civil rights movement had to rise up.
Yeah.
That was a grassroots of not electeds, right? Although there were some electeds who were important,
Right.
Brown
No.
and others, but it was a grassroots movement.
That's it.
Right? So although I might occupy this seat, right, it is the entire electorate that should be offended.
Yep.
And that's why I'm a firm believer. I understand my role as a school board member. It is to both legislate and then to advocate. And I'm advocating that our people rise up, right? Like we sing in the AME Church, rise up,
Oh,
O men
man
of
of God.
God, men
Yeah.
and women of God. Because we cannot sit idly by and let this tyranny persist.
Yes. Sir, you have been, as always, empowering to us, invigorating to us,
Let me just say
inspiring
one
to
more
us.
thing.
Go
Let me
ahead.
just say one more thing.
Go ahead.
Our people need to know this, right? So they understand how elections matter.
Yeah.
The last two governors we had would not would not do Medicaid expansion, right? Who does that affect? It affects working class people.
Yep.
So this same governor, right, then doesn't want you to wear a mask, want you to have mask options rather than, right? They are not concerned about the safety of people who are working class, and they certainly aren't concerned about the safety of people who look like you and I.
Mm. So
So we
Tim,
had better open our eyes
yeah,
and no longer continue to play to this narrative that's trying to kill us
yeah.
and kill our children.
So
If they
then,
want to weaponize their children, then so be it. But we will not. We are intelligent enough.
yeah,
Just because people go to work every day and work 2 and 3 jobs, I don't care if they're in Fort Brayton or they on an Appalachian Ridge, right? If they work hard every day, I want them to know that there's an assault against them
good
in
God
an
Almighty.
effort to keep them safe, and they use buzzwords like liberty, freedom, and democracy, and it even equated mask wearing to harassment, all in an effort to not keep your children safe. And no sooner than we've done this, you continue to see the numbers spike.
Mm.
So tell me how much sense does it make?
So
Come on
so
now.
to all my black, liberated, so-called people who have this conspiracy theory about the government doing this and that. Well, use that same mind that you got about conspiracies and see what some of these elected officials.
Black, brown, and poor,
There you
right? Because
go.
this ain't just about blacks and poor,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Look here, they don't care about working class people, period.
Yeah, but you have this group, of so-called intellectuals who claim they've done their research. Really, all they did was read one article and watch one video, but they claim they researched it and they don't trust the vaccine and they don't trust this and that. Listen, you have got people in positions of power who literally want to see you dead and will weaponize their own children to do so. So now, if that ain't a conspiracy, I don't know what is. So we need to change our mindset. We need to change our mode of operation when it comes to taking responsibility for our own safety and the safety of our children. He is Darryl Jones, Leon County School Board, District 3. Are there
Okay,
any?
answer this question.
All right.
Have you ever seen a governor do a press conference from a hospital?
Wow. Wow.
We call states of emergency for everything else, and yet we refuse to call this a state of emergency.
Yeah, we won't do it. We won't do it. Can you give some closing remarks? I can't believe we almost at an hour already. But people, I'm sure you're going to share this. You're going to comment, continue to comment. Let this conversation happen days from now, weeks from now, until justice rolls down, uh, from the heavens. But can you give some just a closing thought, like only Darryl Jones can, as we bring this conversation to an end?
Well, most simply, I just need us as a community to embrace what we know are best practices to ensure our safety. I know that COVID fatigue is real, it's authentic. I can tell you that breathing through a mask is even more difficult for me, Reverend, because I'm a big guy. I've also got pre-existing conditions, and I too have been impacted by COVID. I have been diagnosed with COVID, and God was El Rafa for me. He healed me,
Yeah.
and for that I am grateful. And so then I did the smart thing, and I got vaccinated. And I know that there are conspiracy theories that abound, But I also know that just this past Friday, a young man whom I've known for a number of years, known his family for years, was an EMT who had devoted his life to saving other people's lives, refused to get vaccinated,
Mm.
and regrettably, in the commission of his duties and helping to serve others and helping to save their lives, his own life has since been compromised. And here, a young man, 43 years old, is no longer with us.
Wow.
So I'm asking our community to make the types of choices that are in the best interest for the safety of their families and the safety of our children. Those families that have children that are of the age to be vaccinated, get them vaccinated. This Delta variant isn't it's just nothing to play with.
And Lambda is
Uh,
coming behind it. The
right?
Lambda variant.
Lambda, and there's another one, I think Gamma, right? So what we've got to do is we've got to get to that level of herd immunity whereby we can guarantee our safety. And then I want our families, I want our parents to know that wearing a mask provides you with an opportunity to teach your children lessons in social responsibility, right? I want us to know different how we tell our kids about stranger danger. Don't get in the car with strangers. Watch your surroundings. Don't go in strange neighborhoods. Don't go when you come home. Lock the door. Don't let anybody in.
That's
All of
right.
these things that we tell our children to keep them safe, right? Keep them safe now, and provide them with the type of example and the type of instruction that they will believe because it comes from the person who loves them most.
Yes.
And that's their moms and their fathers and their
Yeah.
grandmothers and their aunts and embrace these simple instructions as a family.
Yes.
But then I also want us as a community to turn to God.
Yes.
I remember my grandmother used to talk about back in the 70s, these were the last days. And now I've gotten to that age where it may not be in my lifetime,
Yeah.
but the Bible is real.
Yes.
The Word of God is real. And I think right now we as a remnant are called for such a time as this
Yes.
to speak truth to power and let us continue to love one another and love one another through our actions and our deeds and in our conversations.
Yes.
It's time out for division. There is a plan that is afoot to take our very breath away, and we must be smarter than they are. And the way we get wisdom is by looking to God. Let us remain prayerful and remember that we are one another's. We are indeed our brother and our sister's keeper.
Yeah.
Remember, wearing is caring, and in wearing is caring, in doing so, we cater to the vulnerable in our community, and we show the love of God when we care about one another, and we do everything that we can to keep one another safe. And pray for our children
Yeah.
and our
Brother Darryl Jones, as always, it's been a pleasure. I love you to life. Thank you so much for giving your time tonight. And to our audience, thank you all for watching. Look for this to be posted not only on the Facebook page, but also on our YouTube page as well. Please go and support that. He is Darryl Jones, Leon County School Board, District number 3. Sir, it's been a pleasure. Pineview represent.
Again for everything you do for Pineview.
My
I
school.
love y'all.
Get me one of those, man. I don't have a Pineview shirt.
I would give you mine, but I got too many extras.
My guy.
Be swimming in this.
Thank you so much, my friend. We will see you guys soon. You all take care.
Love you, and I love Jacob Chapel Baptist Church family.
Thank you. We love you too, man. Thank you so much.